Hi everyone, Wolf Branch Homestead here, trying to get set up real quick. So, I'm not gonna leave the volume on the entire time here just due to some background noise. I'll turn it on here and there to kind of explain what we're doing. I'll try to leave it on as long as possible. But we've got some green pine needles. We showed you a while back that we had a pine limb go down during the storms, and we took that pine limb and got a bunch of green needles off of it. They're drying out a little bit, not bad yet, still pretty usable, but wanted to try to go ahead and make some hand brooms. We haven't had any orders for them yet, but wanted to just still demonstrate how to make them. We talked about in our actual video we did how when they dry out, they're not completely brown. You can still kind of see that faded green in there. This is a really old hand broom that I've had made for a few years, so you can see it's not totally brown. But we've got our green needles here, and I've got gloves on because these green fresh needles are a little bit sappy, and when we work with these, I don't want to get all that sap on my hands. That's also why, like we mentioned, when it comes to making them, get yourself a pair of scrap scissors to trim them with. Don't use your good kitchen scissors, and make sure to clean them up afterwards, because when you trim these, you're going to get that sap on there too. Now I'm going to try something different when I make these. Normally I'm using kind of a contrasting binding when I finish the hand broom to wrap it up with. Normally I'll use like a bright colored yarn with the green needles, or a white coloring, maybe like a brown twine, but I'm going to try something different. I've got actual green jute twine this time. We're going to see what it looks like together. I think it's going to look kind of weird, but it'll be interesting to try it and see what it looks like. I got this little container here and got this filled up with pine needles. Again, when you're making your little hand broom, you want to make sure you have more than a comfortable handful, so you can go through there and pick out any of the less desirable pieces when you're making it. Again, like we talked about in our first video in this, if you go back to our previous videos that we did, we'll kind of cover that as we go along making this, but make sure that when you gather these, try to keep them all going in the same direction. That's going to help you out a lot when it comes time to actually making one, so that you're not fighting to kind of turn them around and get them going the right way. If you start out like this, gathering them all in the same direction, it's going to help a lot. So what we're going to do is grab a little handful out, sort through there, and we'll talk about what we're looking for as we sort through there. So we're just going to grab a little bit at a time to work with so we can look at it. Any of the pieces we pick out to not use, set those aside and put them back out in nature. That's where all these came from. That's why it's a wonderful decoration, because it's natural. When you use the dried ones, again, natural broom. So what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that, hi Jordan, welcome. We're making sure that, hi, welcome Denise. We're making sure that each piece that we're using to make this hand broom has this thing on the end right here called the sheath. And these keep the needles together when they're on the branch already. This is what attaches them to the branch they're on. We want to make sure we keep these on there and have our pieces attached to that sheath when we're making our hand broom, because it's going to help keep them together. Wrapping them with twine or yarn is going to keep them together as well, but this is going to further help keep everything bundled together from, coming loose. The green ones are very fragrant, and they're decorative. You don't want to use these because, again, we've got that sappy residue that will come out. You want to make sure they're thoroughly dried before you use them. So if you actually want to use your hand broom for sweeping up small messes like bird seed, a little bit of sugar on the counter, you want to use them for painting texture, you're going to want to gather dried brown needles for that. For this, they're just really good decorative pieces, especially for the holidays, winter time. They smell really nice when you first get them, especially if you get a really fresh bundle of pine needles. It's really neat. And like we mentioned before, I got into making these because I think it was back in 2019 actually, I wanted to find a way to decorate naturally for the holidays. And I remembered making some little brooms out of broom corn sorghum. And I thought, well, that could probably apply to with pine needles. And so that's where this started at. We're going to get back to this now. And like I mentioned, you want to make sure that all of your needles have these sheaths on the end. So anything you see not attached, we're going to set that aside. You also want to make sure these are long enough where they fit comfortably in your hand with room extra past that, because you're going to trim this a little bit. You don't want your needles to be too short. You want to make sure that they're long enough. So again, something like Virginia pine is probably going to be too short. Loblolly, this is what these are. It's a decent size. Longleaf, you're going to have more than enough space with those. So we're going to take this, since we've got it in a clump here, we're going to flip it over and kind of look and see what we have here and make sure all of these have the sheaths on them. And just kind of thumb through there and see what we've got. It looks like I gathered them pretty carefully before I put them in that bucket, so it looks like they're all still attached. And we're also going to go through anything that's really brown, sort those out too. Also, anything like this that's kind of broken and bent off, you might sort those out too. Let's see here. Get that one piece out. There we go. And anything that's really short as well. Now this is not quite a full handful, so we're going to get some more. But what you want to do throughout this, and once you get your full handful, you're going to want to pack these down before you go to wrap it. That's going to help by getting them all even at the ends there and get everything together. We're going to grab another handful here. I'm going to set this group that I've already sorted through to the side right here. And then we'll come back to that and we'll get another small handful to work with. What I really should have done was found a tray to actually lay these in. That might have helped a little bit more. But again, pieces like this that are broken and bent up, we're going to pull those out. Try to get them all even up together at the end here. I see one group right here. I'm trying to make sure you can see what I'm doing, but right there, do you see that one that doesn't have the sheath on it? Those are going to come apart a lot easier. There's a loose one right there. We're going to pull these out again so everything will stay together a lot easier. Hopefully, I'm not used to really explaining it as I go along like this. I usually just kind of do it and then type it out, so hopefully this makes sense for everybody. That one right there is a little bit too, the sheath is damaged right here. We're going to pull this one out too. We'll set that group down there with this one and grab another little bit, and then we'll be done and ready to make one. Let's see, that might be a little bit too much. Well, maybe not. That might be a comfortable one. Okay. This one, there's a lot more damaged pieces missing the sheath on there. We're going to pull those out. And it might not really impact anything if you leave them in there. I just feel like it's going to help keep them together a lot better, prevent the needles from falling out as we go. And that's just usually what I've done from the start to keep them all together, is make sure they all have that on the end. So we'll sort through there. Again, with the dried ones, it's a lot easier not wearing gloves because you don't have that sap. But right here, especially this part right here, when the sheath is off, that's really sappy. And then when you go to trim the ends, you're going to get that sap too. So that is just a mess to try to get off of your hands. This one's got some dried pieces. We're going to pull that. So if you don't want all that on your hands, get yourselves a pair of gloves. Almost done here. Ready to make one. Thank you for anybody watching with us. I know the numbers have kind of changed as we went along here. So thank you anybody that's watching live with us. There's one more. There was. I think that's about it. Looks like it. We'll move our discarded ones over to the side. That might be a little bit too much. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit too much. We'll pull some of this out because that's a really large group of needles. We're going to pull probably that group out right there and set that aside. Yeah, that's a good group there. So now it's time to pack all of these down. Hold on to them, pretty well, but keep kind of a loose grip where they'll pack. Even the ones in the middle will come down and get all evened out. I'm just double checking we don't have any loose pieces in there. And you can use your hand, you can use the floor, however you feel comfortable packing those down. And once you do that, we'll set that back down again and get our twine. I can't really tell you how much twine to use. I kind of have just done it over time and just cut a big long strip, especially depending on how long your needles are. So if it helps, you can always leave it still on the spool and then use your one end to tie around there. But if you don't want to have it get kind of tangled up or spinning all over the place, just cut yourself a really long strip. For this, let's see, we'll use quite a bit. Let's see if I can measure it out once we do that. Get a conservative idea with it. Tape measure, so we'll try to use a ruler here and see. So this looks like, I'm kind of wrapping it around the ruler here to see. This looks like about 11 feet of twine. This whole spool that we have is 200 feet. So we'll see what this 11 feet does here. What I'm going to do is tie a slip knot, basically, for the end that's going to start the base of our broom. So hopefully you can see this. Try to make it where you can see it clearly. Taking this, wrapping it over and under, feeding it back through itself here. Sorry, I'm trying to get it. Let's see. I'm trying to get it where you can see it pretty clearly. Over itself and back under, and then tying a knot on itself there. Leave yourself a little bit of a end there when you do that. And the reason we're doing this slip knot is this is going to help tighten it up on the base of the broom. But see, this is why it's the slip, is you can pull and it tightens, but you can also go back and loosen it up. So this right here is a good enough loop. We're going to make sure we have this repacked down, all of them evenly. Pull that one little bit out right there. Other than that, looks all right. We're going to get that all packed back down. And you'll see the ends here at the top are not even, but we're going to trim that off. Once you get everything packed down evenly, here at the end, as even as you can get, then you're going to use that slip knot that you tied and put it around there and pull to tighten. This one's, there we go. We got one piece that came through here. Let's pull that out. But we're going to pull it to tighten it, make sure everything's packed down again. And whatever way you were pulling to tighten it, slide it down towards the end there. You're going to take, when you get it all tightened up, and take that little piece you had there and tuck that down, and then start to wrap around. And you're going to have that little tail down there. You're going to tuck that under as you wrap it. You want to have a little bit of a tail on there. You don't want to have that slip knot with the tail end too short, because when you pull to tighten it, it'll just undo it. So giving yourself a little bit of room there will help out a lot. We're going to wrap a few times, and then we're going to pull it down. So right here, you're going to pull down, wrap a few more times, then pull that down, and that's just getting it all together, not leaving any gaps in there, getting it all tightened up. Again, I'm using a thick jute twine because it really helps to brace it better than a thin cotton twine or yarn. That thick jute twine gives it a lot more stability when you're making your little handle for it. Which again, for the green ones being just decorative, it doesn't matter as much. But when you're making your usable dried needle brooms, you want them to be sturdy for sure. So again, just pulling that down, wrap a few times. Let's see, let's do that again right there. That one went over. There we go. And you'll see where there's like some little gaps right here. When you pull it down and tighten it, it closes that up. So we've got, making sure the end's still pretty even there. Again, trying to see what I'm doing here, but also make sure you can see what I'm doing as well. And that's one thing I like about using the jute twine. You can also do this. You can hold it like this and wrap, or you can take it and hold it this way and then spin it as you go, kind of holding that twine a little bit tightly. So you can do it different ways there. But another thing I like about this using the jute twine is, again, it's natural fibers. This spool in particular, I get these at Home Depot. You can order online, but I go whenever we're in the store and I need some, I'll just pick up a little spool on there. But I like using the natural fibers, you know, biodegradable, recyclable. I like that it's biodegradable, so that way, in the event, you know, you're done with these, you've used it up, you don't really have a use for sweeping anything with it, then you can always take these, disassemble them, just untie them, and you can reuse this twine for something. You can put the needles back out into nature. You know, if you don't have any kind of paint, chemicals like that on them, just put it back out where it came from. Again, you can always reuse that twine. And like we've mentioned before, when they dry out, you can take them apart and then rewrap them tighter, because I'll show you in a minute, when they dry out, they're going to lose some volume, and so all this twine is going to get loose, so you'll want to rewrap them. We're almost done here, and then we'll tie it and show you what it looks like. Especially once you get up here where you don't have as much room to kind of hold it like that and wrap it, doing it like this will help out. Now I wrap, when I'm wrapping the hand brooms, I want to have a grip portion. I want it to be a little bit bigger than my grip is, a little bit wider rather. So just hold it in your hand like that and see where your hand is, and make sure you have some room on either side just to give yourself a comfortable grip if you are actually using them. If you're displaying them, it doesn't much matter. You know, you can have it just a little bit of support on it. It doesn't have to go all the way down. Also, depending on how you wrap these and how you trim them, like we've talked about before, is going to determine what your needle grouping looks like. So, for instance, if you don't wrap it that far down, your needles are going to be more spread out like this. If you wrap it and trim it with only a little bit of the needles showing, it's going to tighten it up a lot. So depending on how you wrap that, especially if you're making one for painting texture, if you're using a dried one to make texture with, how you wrap them and trim them is going to dictate how your needle grouping is when you're painting with it. So again, the less twine on here, the higher up you trim it, it's going to be more spread out like that if you trim it. Okay, sorry about that. We've got a little bit of background noise, so I'll just kind of make this quick again. But depending on, again, how you wrap this and where you trim it is going to dictate what your needle grouping looks like. So again, more spread out or more compact. So we're going to tie this now. I might have to mute it again in just a minute, sorry. But we're basically just going to go and tuck this under. I got a little bit too much there. There we go. We're going to take that and tuck that under. We're not going to pull it tight just yet right here, but we're going to take our bit back here and pull that. And then what you'll do is take and feed this back through. Tighten that bit, and then tighten right there. Hopefully that made sense. Hopefully you can kind of see how I tied it. And then we'll do one more knot around, just to double make sure. And again, you can go back and take these and untie them later and reuse that twine to either rewrap it when it's dry or to make another project with it. Now see, that was 11 feet of that twine is what I estimated on that. We've got maybe a foot left, so that's a comfortable size for me to use. We'll trim off our excess. You can use this for other small projects. We use twine for labeling some things at our flea market booth, so that's where pieces like this can come in handy, or other little projects. And trim that off. Now what we're going to do with this is, I don't want to trim this too short because it's decorative, so we'll probably trim it off about right here. But you can see it does give it a decent support like this. Also, I missed earlier, Black Cat, hi, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. That twine gives us some stability, but it's also a little bit flexible still. But what we're going to do is trim off. Again, you're going to get some sap here, so clean your scissors off very well afterwards. We're going to trim about like this. Now see, here's how you can see. Let's trim this a little bit better here. You can take and flatten it, pinch it between your fingers, and that'll give you an idea on if you're cutting straight across. The scissors are already getting gunked up. But see, this will kind of show you what I mean about the grouping. We have a decent amount of space here left. You can see how far apart that's spread, versus if I trimmed it lower or I brought the wrapping up higher, it would close it in like that. So especially if you're painting with it, that'll really help you get an idea of how your different little bristles will look. So again, tighter grouping, either trim it shorter down or bring your wrapping higher up. But I think wrapping wise, you would just want to trim it shorter. Wrapping wise, again, you can see in my hand that it's got room for my hand with a little bit extra on either side. So just make it to the comfort of your own hand. But again, the green ones, because of all that sap and because they are going to dry out, don't use these, just have them for decoration to start with. I'll show you a dried one here in a moment, and we'll actually sweep this up with it. But you can see that residue on the scissors right there. Definitely need to clean these off, probably use some rubbing alcohol on that. I need to do a little bit more trimming. It's not quite where I want it. It's not quite even there. Let's see. And then after this, I was hoping I could make more, but it's getting dark out, so it'll be time to do some chores, get the animals all taken care of. But that looks nice right there. You can see there's a few pieces down here that aren't quite long enough, but still, for the most part, it is. Sorry, we're kind of unmuting and muting just due to background. But again, this is a dried one that was made green, and you can see how it shrunk and it needs to be rewrapped versus this one right here that's freshly made. That's not going anywhere, pushing on that. Give me just one moment and I'll show you what a dried brown one looks like that you can use for actually sweeping and painting with. Okay, here are two that are dried that were wrapped brown needles that were dried fully before I made these. You can see one, sorry, our clock is going off up here. It's really pretty. I'll let you listen to that for a minute. But we rubber band these so that especially when they're being transported, they don't get damaged. So I'll show you the difference in one that was wrapped and trimmed shorter versus one that was longer out. Let's see. I need to retrim that one a little bit. It's good not to leave them rubber banded, but it's not too bad. There you go. You can see that grouping difference. Very significant, especially on this one right here. How far apart. So you can see when you make the brown ones, the dried needles, especially if you want to paint with them or if you want to sweep versus, you know, something like this. If you wanted to sweep with it, this doesn't spread out enough really for that versus something like this. So you can see how the trimming and the wrapping makes a difference on those. We're going to sweep up our mess and then we will call it an evening. Now you can see an actual practical use of the dried one. The green one smells great. When you trim the ends off, again, there is going to be sap. It's going to be sticky, so don't put this on an important surface. But we'll show you sweeping with one of these. And just gentle like that. You don't have to use much pressure to sweep with them. They work really well. But that is it for now. There's our dried ones. There's a green one that needs to be, it dried out and needs to be rewrapped. You can see how much room is in there now. And here's our fresh one. We hope you enjoyed watching with us. Thank you for everybody who joined live. Thank you for everybody who watches with us afterwards. We really appreciate you. And as always, until the next video or live stream, take care, everybody.